G'day, my name's Steve and this is Revesy Workshops. Today we're going to continue with building the Garratt, part 4, and we're going to continue with working on the rear tank stroke coal bunker. You're watching me building the Garratt at the moment, and some of you may be wondering, Steve seems to work in a rather haphazard way. First of all he's doing this, then he's doing that, then he cuts over to something else. What's going on? He doesn't seem to work in a logical fashion. Well, the reason I do that is because there are gaps in time between having parts ordered, for example, and when they arrive, or when processes that are done outside the workshop take time and they arrive, and that produces some downtime which could affect your ability to build things. So what I do is divide whatever model engineering project I'm doing into several different stages and several different projects, and then I look ahead one project at a time. So to give you an example, you can see here the drawings for my marker lights. Here are the marker lights under construction. Why have I stopped on them? Well, the reason why I've done this is because, as you know, I'm using CAD drawings to make parts. So I've got a friend who's very kindly converting my sketches into CAD drawings. While I'm waiting for him to do those, I made these, and then as soon as the drawings arrived, the next stage is to send them off to the laser cutter to get the parts made. So here's one of the laser cut components, for instance, and that takes time. So while I was waiting for them, I ordered the materials for those angles, and then I did a little bit more on the marker lights. Then the angles arrived, so I started making angles. Then the laser cutter completed what they were doing, so I then took the parts that needed to be bent to the sheet metal worker to be bent, and while I'm waiting for him to do that, I started machining the angles. Then when the parts came back from the sheet metal, I did a trial put together, and you may remember that. I'm just showing you the tanks actually completed, but I trial fitted it to make sure it didn't need any adjustments. Meanwhile, I continued making angles. Once I had sufficient angles done, I can then start putting things together. So it's a continuous process of design, order materials, or have processes done, and then making the components. And there's a gap between these, and each time there's a gap, I will fill that gap with another project so I can keep the continuity of the building of the Garratt going, and that, therefore, I'm able to build the Garratt at a reasonable time frame. So I've actually got 3 stages or 3 projects of the Garratt being done at the same time. So the first was those marker lights, the second was the building of the tanks themselves, and here's the third one. This is 2 headlamps that I'm going to make for the engine. I had to go to the metal spinner to get these parts done in the box. You see more laser cut components sitting here. Here's some aluminium castings, so I had to get patterns made. Then I had to go off and get the components cast, and now this is all sitting here waiting for me to put together. But we will continue on with building the tanks. When there's gaps, I'll go back to the marker lights and work on them. Once the tanks are finished, I'll work on the marker lights full time. Once the marker lights are finished, then I'll get onto this headlamp, and work on them full time. In the meantime, I will think ahead. Perhaps I need to do more drawings like this, order materials, and therefore keep that continuity going. So when I'm showing you videos here, what you're seeing is that process playing out. And if I think there's something interesting, perhaps I didn't explain something properly, or maybe I thought I need to re-clarify something, I might add that too. So you are seeing a logical progress of the engine, but it's being done in perhaps 2 or 3 stages. So in summary, what I'm saying to you, the success in building a project, whether it be something large like this or something smaller, really depends on several things. First of all, your desire to want to build it in the first place. Secondly, it becomes discipline. Disciplining yourself to stay on a project, not to let it stop, but to work on it in a continuous fashion. I can get out in the workshop every day. Sometimes I may only spend half a day, half an hour I should say, in the workshop. Other times it could be a whole day. How much time you have available to you, of course, depends on your lifestyle. If you're working, you're not going to be able to put in the same amount of hours as someone who's retired. If you're looking after family, well, then you're dividing your time between what you do for yourself and what you do for others. The other thing is habit forming. The reason why I get out in the workshop every day, and sometimes I don't always make it, I might miss a day, but the reason why more than anything else is so that I discipline myself and I form a habit of doing things, and by doing that I'm able to get my projects to move along in a reasonable time frame. And that's important because you want to be seeing your projects grow in front of you. If it's taking too long and you seem to be putting in a lot of time and effort yet nothing seems to be happening, well, you'll lose interest pretty quickly. So good habit forming, a good discipline, and of course the desire means you're going to be able to do these things without difficulty. Here are some parts that have just come back from the laser cutters, so I thought I'd show you these, give you an idea of what things look like when they come back. Being stainless steel, of course, they have a protective cover on one side, and this is the side that's on the outside that you see. Although in my case it's a little bit not worth it because I'm going to end up painting it all. But if it was a stainless steel project, then you want to see nice shiny stainless steel at the end of building something. Here we have some items for brackets, and there are 2 parts for these brackets. They're actually a hinge, so they get cut. These little segments here are showing the little joining pieces between components, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. So I will cut those out, and then I will clean all this up, and we're using the tongue and groove method. So these here go into slots to be welded. I'll show you more of that process as we go along, but this gives you an idea of what to expect when you get things laser cut. Now that I have all the laser cut components here, the next stage for me is to prepare all the parts that have to be welded together. So I'm going to stop working on the angles for a little while, and the first component I'm going to make are the 6mm bushers that bolt the rear tank onto the rear framework. So that's a simple turning exercise, and being as it's small, I'll do it in my small lathe. First thing we do is to face off. Little bit of lubricant. This is stainless steel I'm using, so I'm going with a nice steady feed as I'm only using tool steel on the lathe. Next I'm going to bring in the centre drill. I like to drill the holes and tap them first before I do any of the outside. I put a little bit of lubricant on the centre drill before we started. So now I drill in until we get to the tapered section, and then we do a little bit of the tapered section for countersinking. Halfway up the hill was the term that I was taught. Next we'll use a little pilot drill. I don't want to put too much pressure on the tailstock threads, so we use this little pilot drill. In my case I'm going into a depth of 18 millimeters. When you see the flute starting to jam up, the swarf, just brush the swarf off. You just keep repeating the process until you get to 18 millimeters depth. This is now followed up with the tapping drill for an M6 thread. Nice even pressure. And a constant feed. Until we get to that 18 millimeter depth. There we go. Next step is to tap the hole. This is my tapping setup. So this keeps it all nice and straight line, takes the load off the tap. Little bit of cutting oil. Start the tap, back off, sorry, break the chips. Continue the process. You can see it's going in easily because I've actually started cutting the thread before I turn the camera on, and then I've pulled the tap out just to clear any burrs that might be there. Now I'll continue tapping the hole. I can hear it just starting to bite. There we go. And I'll just keep following this procedure until we reach the bottom of the hole. Next thing I'm going to do is put the little register in that goes into the hole in the platework to hold the bush in place while it's being welded. So what I'm going to do is I've engaged the saddle on the lead screw, and I can manually turn the lead screw until the tip just touches that paper, so I don't damage the tool. I already know what diameter I want to turn it to, and the reason I've zeroed it is I'm going to measure in a known depth as well. So we'll just do that now. Once again, nice even cuts, even pressure. Just take that burr off. Another cut. Take it down to the final diameter. And there we have it. Just check it with the micrometer and make sure we're where we should be. And I can see, yes we are. So that one's going to fit in the hole fine. Now you can use a parting off tool to cut this to length, but I find on a small lathe like this with a hard material like stainless steel, you run the risk of breaking the parting off tool. So I'm going to take this over to the bandsaw and cut it to length, and then we'll come back and face it off. Last thing to do is to face them off and put a little chamfer on them. I only need to take a light skimming cut here, so they look pretty, even though they're going to be hidden in a tank and never be seen again. And there you have it. One down, 6 to go. When you're finished using your lathe, even if you're not going to use it for a little while, always pays to spend 5 minutes, give it a good clean down. It's a little thing, but can make a big difference to the machine, extending its life and accuracy. My workshop, as you've seen, contains a lot of stuff. Even looks a bit disorderly, but I always look after my machines. Next thing I'm going to do is to make this hinge which gets welded in. So we've got the 2 plates where the hinge is going to go. Here's the hinge as it came back from the laser cutters. So these long pieces are going to go on here, like so. These short pieces go on here. So you can see if I turn that 90 degrees, you'll see where they fit. So first thing I'll do is we'll cut them all into their individual pieces, and then we'll get on the sander and sand them. So I'll begin by cutting the little tags that hold all the pieces together. Making sure I use the full length of the blade. Cuts very easy. Next thing to do is to grind these little tags off, and this one here, being careful not to catch my fingers or let the work get too hot. And that brings us to the end of another session of Garratt building. Progressing quite nicely, I feel. Stay tuned for the next instalment. See you later.